Hey there everyone, and welcome to DnD Horror Stories with DnD Doge, where I read you all the cringe RPG horror stories from Reddit. It's always a bit awkward to be a first-time player in Dungeons & Dragons, but it would doubly suck if the other players are just general a-holes that punish you for finally getting into character. To the story. The single worst experience in my 10 years of game mastering, by Reddit user Automatic Archive 171. This is going to be a rough one, but I need to get this off my chest. This will consist of 3 parts: a setup, an incident, and an aftermath. Sorry for the big read. I just feel I need to share this in case someone, especially new, may get some insight with their games and feel heard that this type of behavior is not okay in any sense. The setup. About 6 months ago, I was running 2 separate games for my brother when he opted to merge the 2 games so that all of his friends could play together instead of trying to juggle so many schedules. One party was very new. 2 players were on their 3rd session ever, and my brother, who has played for years. We'll call the new players Ashley and Johnson. I think I see what OP did there. And the other party were a group of 5 that had played together every week for about 4 months, with 2 problem players. We'll call them Travis and Willingham, who are also brother and sister. Well, now I know for sure that OP is a Critical Role fan with that naming convention. One of the players in the group of 5, Willingham, is autistic, and I'd been doing my best to accommodate for them, as sometimes they had been very rude to other players, intentionally or not. But it wasn't my first time game mastering for someone with autism, and I don't blame that at all for what transpired. I just wanted to preface the situation. And to just set the tone of these problem players, Travis, in the 3rd session he ever played, killed my brother's character for not sharing the details of a secret letter he was sent concerning my brother's backstory with a reckless attack and a crit. Well, that isn't a good sign of things to come. Anyways, the 1st session as a single group was alright. There was good combat right off the bat, and I had a good feeling that they would work well together. Then, when they made camp, Johnson, a rogue who had gotten caught stealing somewhat foolishly in the first couple sessions, made the mistake of stealing from Travis's backpack and got caught. Ashley reprimanded him in-game, apologized, and returned the belongings to their new companion, which surprised and pleased me with how well they handled it in-game and in character as a new player, and tried to correct the situation. However, as Travis accepted the goods back and forgave Johnson, Willingham jumped out of their chair at the table and began cussing out Ashley for, quote, waking them from their sleep, because they were worried that they wouldn't get their spell slots back since their sleep was disturbed. Ashley immediately froze and became small in their chair, and I quickly told Willingham to relax and that there's no reason that they wouldn't get their spells back, and that Ashley was trying to be helpful, and it wasn't right to blow up on them. Willingham shrugged it off and said that they were going back to sleep, and Ashley didn't say much at all the rest of the session. After the session, I apologized to Ashley, told them that they did well, and didn't do anything wrong. I also said that I would talk with Willingham about it, since I told Willingham and Travis before that I wouldn't stand for any players at my table feeling uncomfortable or unwelcome. When I did reach out, Willingham never responded, but Travis said that they would talk to Willingham, and they understood that it was out of line, and it wouldn't happen again. I have a feeling it's going to happen again. Now, after that, the group had some downtime out of game at the new city they arrived at, and once again, the rogue player tried to steal something and got caught off of bad rolls. I had to sit down with Johnson and tell them that, in D&D, you can't rely on only the dice and stats, that they should approach situations as if in character and not doing just math, and that maybe a more clever solution than breaking into a noble's house in broad daylight would actually reap them some benefits if done cleverly. They agreed, and the rest of the party received a letter from him in the dungeons saying that he had been captured and listed his bail amount. Now, this week, a couple people were out of town, and only Johnson, Travis, and Willingham were available to play. But I figured they were in a new city, and the rest of the party would not miss any core story plots. And the 3 players all agreed, days in advance, to bail Johnson out of the dungeon, and then explore a sort of side quest at the local theater together. The incident. The 3 players showed up to the session, ready to bail out the rogue and go check out their theater quest. Now, in Johnson's backstory, he hates magic. He's very uncomfortable with it, and he made it clear that he has a fear of it because he doesn't understand it. So, at the start of the session, Willingham used a sending spell to communicate to Johnson that she and Travis were going to come get him, and asked if they knew anything about possibly breaking him out instead of paying the bail. Johnson, in his first time with a spell being cast on him, looked at me and said, "What do I do? Would I understand this magic and how it works?" I had him roll intelligence, and he rolled a 3, so I said he wouldn't understand how it works, and based off his backstory, would probably feel a bit uncomfortable hearing voices in his head. He agreed and did not respond, and Willingham proceeded to call him, out of game, as if it made any difference, an effing idiot, a waste of a 3rd level spell slot, and said to Travis, "F that, we're leaving him in there. We can do the theater quest without him." At this point, I argued that I made the ruling, and that if they weren't happy about it, then they should be upset at my ruling, not at Johnson for playing true to their character, finally, as a new player. But they shrugged it off again, and said they were going to the theater. As the game master, I'm now silently upset, because I know what's coming. I'm going to have to run 2 separate sessions, because there's no way I'm just going to leave Johnson out of the game because the other 2 changed their minds on the spot like that. So I do. As I'm running for Travis and Willingham at the theater, I'm running a text-based session with Johnson as he tried to break out of prison with his 1 lockpick that he had left. And what a session Johnson had. Finally, this new player made some incredibly creative decisions, had great rolls to back him up, got a ton of information about the corruption of the city, which would lead to the main story plot, and escaped out of the dungeons. And it took him 2 hours and 31 minutes. For 2 hours and 31 minutes, Travis and Willingham played on and didn't know that I was running a text-based session with Johnson. For 2 hours and 31 minutes, they ignored the only other player at the table with them, even when they were under the impression that he was not getting to play at all. So, by this time, Johnson made it back to the inn, and Travis says, "Well, we can't figure out this mystery at the theater, so I guess we can go get Johnson." So he goes to the keep an hour after Johnson had escaped, and tells the guards that he is his companion. The guards say that he has escaped and he must be questioned, and Travis rolls a nat 1 on deception to be excused. So the guards take him in for questioning. Once inside with the warden, Travis once again rolls a nat 1 on deception and is caught lying about crimes he had committed prior to this session. So he is thrown in a cell until Johnson is at least found and pays his bail. At this point, Travis declares at the table, "This is effing BS. The next time I see Johnson's character, I'm killing him." Willingham is also angry, but is refusing to help Travis now, saying that she doesn't want to pay her gold to get him out. So Johnson, having heard all of this, which he knows, but his character doesn't know, changes from his prisoner's clothes back into his armor and speaks with Willingham's character and says in-game, Oh, he got arrested too? No worries. I just got out of there. I know the secret exit. I'll go save him. As Johnson breaks back in, he again makes very clear and creative ways to accomplish his goals. And I'm thinking it's a shame, because this is his best session yet, and he deserves a good time. But when he gets to Travis's character, he offers to grab his gear from the evidence chest that he stole the key for earlier. And Travis says, "No, get me the F out of here now." So Johnson sneaks him out as Travis complains about losing his new great axe. Why is he complaining? He was the one that refused that Johnson retrieve his equipment for him. Now, at this point, the group hears bells in the city, as now there have been 2 prisoner escapes right out from the royal keep, and now the city guard are sweeping the streets looking for anyone in prisoner's clothes. So Willingham flees without the others to the north gate of the city, and Johnson helps Travis to the south gate of the city. As they approach the gate, Travis says, "I pushed Johnson down behind the building and go to the gate by myself." Okay. He approaches the guards and says, "Hey guards, one of the prisoners from the escape is right back there. I saw him wearing the prisoner's clothes. Go over there together and get them." He rolled a 4 on deception while wearing prisoner's clothes. Well, that was a genius move. Johnson quickly approaches and attempts to bribe the guards with the gold he found in the keep, using all of it. His entire reward for finally being a successful rogue, to get them out of the city. At this point, I said we're going to end the session there, and got up to go get some water, having been stressed out of my mind trying to keep all of my brother's friends civil while he's out of town and not even here. But when I get back from grabbing a cup of water, once again, Travis and Willingham are at the table berating Johnson about not doing things the way they wanted, for making stupid decisions, for, quote, being an effing idiot, and for ruining their night. I said that's enough, and for everyone to head out, and that we'd talk about what would happen going forward later, because I was not okay with what happened at all. Johnson was very upset that night, and thought he had actually played well, which he genuinely had, and that he had gotten yelled at for it. I told him not to worry, and that I would take care of it, and that their behavior was not going to be allowed at my table any further. My brother was also pissed when he found out that some of his friends treated another one from his other game in that way, and agreed that I should talk with Travis and Willingham. The aftermath. I asked Travis and Willingham to a call the next day to discuss all that happened. I addressed everything and made sure to show them the message times for when I started the text session with Johnson and when we finished it, showing that they ignored him for over 2.5 hours and that they saw no problem with that. I also addressed their language and attitude towards him specifically, and they said they didn't understand what was wrong with it. They said, and I quote, "That was our most fun session we ever played though. How was any of that wrong? You and Johnson just don't understand how D&D works. This is how it's supposed to be." I told them that no healthy table anywhere plays like this, and as the game master, if they were going to be at my table, I need there to be respect to my players and not outbursts of berating them for their choices, and that I really thought they should apologize to Johnson because he was feeling pretty hurt about the whole situation. They said that was unreasonable and that I didn't know how to run D&D, so they were going to leave the game. Later that night, they messaged me that I ambushed them by addressing the situation and that I punished them and the outcomes of the 2 nat 1s that Travis rolled in the deception checks. Well, yeah, they were nat 1s. What did he expect to happen? Less than 2 days after this phone call, they reached out to my brother and to Johnson to apologize for their actions, but never responded to my messages about apologizing, that they felt ambushed, and that I was sorry D&D just didn't work out for their friend group. In 10 years, I have never experienced players like this. Am I crazy? Is this the norm now? My core group with all my friends would never play like this, let alone talk to each other like that. No, that is definitely not the norm. Those players were completely selfish by being okay with Johnson not being able to play for that long, and all because Johnson only played into their character. Then, Travis had the balls to try and turn in Johnson's character out of pettiness, and didn't even think about how he was wearing a prisoner outfit. And after all that, they decide to berate Johnson out of game for their own dumb decisions? I would say that them leaving willingly because OP didn't know how to run D&D is a blessing in disguise. But at least it sounds like they did eventually apologize to Johnson and OP's brother, but didn't have the guts to apologize to OP. Hopefully, OP can still run the game for all the other players that had nothing to do with this. And if Travis and Willingham end up coming back, hopefully they'll realize how big of dicks they were being. When you play D&D, the goal is for everyone to have fun and play, and for them to willingly just let a player sit there for that long is really messed up. At least OP knew this and ran the text session with Johnson simultaneously. But with that said, before we move on to the following story, if you are enjoying the video, it would help loads if you could roll a crit on that like button. If not for me, then how about for a cute Nipsey Cat clip? Cats are a liquid after all. But with that, let's get to the following post, where house rules ruin a player's first time with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. To the story. The Dungeon Master of Patently Unfair House Rulings by Reddit user Saligos. I'm so tired of house rules. One of these days, I want to join a group that just plays by the normal rules. It feels like most people come up with the absolute most unbalanced solutions to non-existent problems. I'm here to discuss one of the absolute worst cases of this, now that it's been long enough. I found the group on Reddit, so I have had to lie low, as this experience seethed below the surface and burned to get out. So I was tired of 5th edition D&D, and really wanted to try Pathfinder 2nd edition. All of my friends seemed to be completely allergic to trying anything new, so I was willing to put up with a group of randoms to, at the very least, learn the rules by playing, so that maybe I could DM and ease my friends into it myself. This was apparently everyone's first time playing. The other 2 players had picked a wizard and a monk, so I figured a good bet to round things out would be a champion. Crowd control, tankiness, limited healing. I felt like it was a good pick. House rules popped up right from the start to limit our character creation. 1. Only a handful of races were available, because the DM reasoned that the rest were too rare in our kingdom of origin. I figured that was fair enough. 2. Any feats outside the core rules, or core feats deemed, quote, too strong by the DM, would be subject to DM approval or veto. 3. Magic items would be rare to non-existent. We weren't allowed to craft them until level 9. The DM had seen the automatic bonus progression rules and thought they were, quote, too strong, and applied a gimped version of them. 4. It was revealed that at the start of the game, an unnatural storm would strike our ship, and we would lose everything we weren't wearing to bed, except whatever one object we could reasonably grab as the ship went down. As a champion, I was not allowed to keep my armor. 5. After some debate, our wizard was graciously allowed to learn spells outside of the ones gained from leveling, despite the DM declaring that this class feature was broken. So to compensate, they would need to spend as many days trying to learn a single spell as the spell would normally take to learn in hours. This process was still subject to failure and maintained its normal costs. Did I mention our purported mission was also time-sensitive and required us to constantly move across the breadth of 2 continents? We start the campaign, and once more, it's made clear that we have nothing more than we could carry. A spell book, a weapon, what have you. That and our war chest. A chest filled with gold to fund our expedition, given to a Spire King that washed up to shore with us. We start to discuss how to spend it, and I mention we could probably hire a ship and move quickly along the coast, skipping the desert. The DM gets upset and declares that all boats are locked in port because lately, magical storms blow ships apart the second they try to go too far out to sea. Fine. If we have to move across the desert, I declare that it's vital that I get my hands on some good armor and a shield to be effective. But the Dungeon Master interjects. Actually, they don't have metal armor in the desert. It's too hot. You only have access to leather and hide. Also, metal armor was, quote, too strong and unfair. Okay, well, I was familiar with the Dark Sun setting, and brought up the option of chitin armor as a potential desert-friendly solution. The DM said, absolutely not, and that studded leather was the best I could hope for, and that was pushing it according to the DM because of the metal. Well, that majorly sucks, I guess. Could I at least get a metal shield? Absolutely not. No metal at all. Not even weapons. I was begrudgingly allowed to keep my sword though, since I technically chose it as my one saved item. If I hadn't, I wouldn't be able to get any. The people of the desert didn't use metal at all for anything. It was too hot. Then, after another moment of thought, he declared, even if you get armor, you can only wear it for a maximum of 2 hours in the desert, which we would be traveling across on foot. Any longer risked consequences like heatstroke. That seemed patently ridiculous. My entire shtick was being an impassable wall to support my allies, and I would have only mildly better defenses than they did. Now I was expected to just not wear armor for half our travel time, and hope I had it on when random encounters hit? The DM's solution? We could wear armor in shifts. If we switched off every few hours, then at least one of us would have armor. Our party was a champion, a monk, and a wizard, I will remind you. Guess which one of us actually wears armor? The DM patted himself on the back for his clever solution anyway. I was starting to get annoyed. The game was balanced around me having armor, all of us having access to magical items or the automatic progression rules, and at every turn, the DM was declaring class features as too broken and coming up with off-the-cuff solutions to these problems. Before we could get to town, he had a bunch of goblins rob us of our war chest, dragging it off. We pursued and nearly killed them all until the DM sicked a griffin on us out of nowhere to cover the goblins' escape. We barely survived, and when we tried to pursue the goblins, the DM told us in no uncertain terms that the trail went cold after 2 days and could not be picked up because we failed a survival check and none of us were proficient. We asked what we were expected to do now, but the DM just shrugged and acted like we were the idiots for letting this happen. We went to town to try and work for coin so we could literally afford to eat and get gear. The very next session, we all got wiped in combat when negotiations with our employer soured. The DM and the 2 other players, all of whom apparently knew each other, declared that Pathfinder 2nd edition was stupid and unbalanced. and then voted to move back to 5th edition because it was more balanced. My input did not matter. I was outvoted. As I sat there typing up a polite resignation message, the DM started stacking up house rules for 5th edition in chat again, one after another, all of them completely unfavorable to players, like long rests that required an entire week, and more or less everything else above. I decided I was done. I should have decided I was done on session 1. I came here to learn and play Pathfinder 2nd edition, not wallow in 5th edition and garbage house rules. I just do not understand this type of DM. I'm so sick of grouping up with people who have no concept of how game balance works and decide, based on feelings, what is and isn't balanced on the fly. I have yet to encounter a set of house rules that haven't made me cringe in some way, but maybe that's just my bad luck. Yeah, it certainly seemed like OP just didn't have any luck in finding a game to properly learn Pathfinder 2nd edition. By the sounds of things, it seems like this was everyone in the group's first foray into Pathfinder, and when you are starting a new system that you've never played before, it's probably best just to stick with rules as written, and then figure out any house rules that you would like to add on later. I would say a good example of a good house rule in D&D, as I'm not that familiar with Pathfinder, is drinking a potion during combat only costs a bonus action, and giving it to someone else is an action. That is a house rule that we use in my game. And you can also have house rules that are negative against players, but not that bad. As an example, my rogue character has reliable talent, which makes every roll that I'm proficient with never be below a 10 on the dice. But I suggested to the DM that nat 1s should still be fails, so that there is still a bit of tension on those rolls. It sounded like this DM might have had a DM versus player mentality, thus why all his rulings never favored the player, but just hindered them. And I don't blame OP for leaving that group after that experience. Hopefully, they can find a group that will do Pathfinder just with the normal rules, so they can finally learn the system. Or OP's normal group could actually just give it a shot for OP's sake. Now, before we move on, if you would like to help the channel out directly, I'll be sure to link my Buy Me a Coffee and Ko-Fi in the description. Or you could always become a patron or supporter here on YouTube, because let's just say that the YouTube algorithm hasn't been too nice to old Doge here lately. But with that, let's top off today's episode of DnD Horror Stories with one that is a bit more lighthearted, if not a bit confusing. To the story. Nah, I'ma stay. By Reddit user Manvetti. A few years ago, a seat opened up in a campaign I was playing in. We put up a looking for player post, evaluated some candidates, and picked the one who seemed like the best fit. Over the course of the week, we helped the new guy set up his character. He wanted to play a paladin of the same god that our cleric followed, which seemed great to us, as it gave him an immediate in with the party. At this point in the game, the party had just touched down in the settlement that we were using as our base before heading out on the next leg of our adventure, so it was a good time to bring a new character into the party too. In short, everything seemed to be going well with the new guys onboarding. When the day of the session came, we started off with some out-of-character welcoming, introductions, etc. Then began the session proper. This started with the cleric meeting the paladin, then introducing him to the rest of the party. After introductions, everyone seemed ready for glory, so we all piled into our ship to sail off towards our next stop. Everyone except the new paladin, that is. He decided that he wanted to stay in town to see what his god wanted him to do. It just so happened that our cleric was the head of the local congregation, the highest ranking official in their church for hundreds of miles in any direction, So he pointed out to the paladin that he'd received signs from their god that this was the way to go. But that apparently wasn't enough. When in-character discussion failed, our DM resorted to outright telling the new guy, "The story is going in this direction. If you don't get on the ship, you won't be a part of it." But still, this player said, "I'll stay on the dock and see what comes along." Thinking that he had maybe been a bit too subtle, the DM tried again. "If your character doesn't get on the ship, you won't be a part of this D&D group." But again, he got no traction. "I'll wave at them from the dock and stay to take care of things around here." So we said our goodbyes. The DM booted him from the Discord, and we never heard from him again. To this day, I still have no idea what his motivation was. His introduction came at the very start of the session, so it's not like he saw our playing style and decided that it wasn't for him. But still, every now and then, I think back and have a bit of a chuckle about the paladin, the glorious champion of a militant god all about fighting the good fight, who was offered the chance for adventure, glory, and a fight to save the world, but responded with, "Nah, I think I'll just stay here." I swear, every now and then, I'll come across a story where a player just doesn't understand that in order to play D&D, you actually need a character that wants to go with the party. Sometimes, for whatever reason, a player will make a character that just doesn't want to go with the party. But this one is especially stupid, as this character basically had every in to join the party that you could ask for. Heck, the DM even flat out told the player that he had to go with the party, but even that did not register. I would almost like to think that this player was just trolling the group, as I hate to realize that there are people out there that are really that stupid, but I have lived for a while, so I know better. Though, at least OP and his group have a funny story to share now about the paladin that couldn't paladin. But that is all I have for you today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and hope that your games remain horror story free. Until next time.